Thoughts on pro-metabolic people being against time-restricted eating due because they say it can downregulate metabolism and lead to excessive cortisol. Nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense out there, Lukey. If you get enough animal foods, I mean, if you really remember what I said about a dirty fast or a dirty time-restricted feeding where you can throw taurine, leucine in a fasted state and still build muscle protein synthesis and still bring cortisol down. So, which is basically a sort of, but yeah, it's nonsense. I mean, time-restricted feeding, I do it every day. It's not affecting me in a negative way. Doesn't affect anyone in a negative way. Humans have been doing it for thousands of years. We cycle through. People used to get up in the morning. They'd get a boost of cortisol. They'd get a boost in both free fatty acids and glucose to get started on the day. And then after that, they would basically enjoy, let me just drink a bit of coffee. They'd get the energy to enjoy tracking an animal. Then they'd kill the animal. Then they'd, sometimes cut a bit of, a bit of stuff and all that. Organs, especially a bit of liver or something, or have a bit of the blood. And then they'd take the rest of the animal back. They'd have it in the afternoon with the rest of the tribe, and then in the early evening, they'd basically then sit around the campfire talking about the hunt of the day, and and they would feast in that afternoon. For a number of hours, they would feast on all that food. They would just enjoy that food. That's how people lived. They had 1 or 2 meals. Even in agricultural times in the past, people would work the land, and they would get up very early. They'd work the land, then come back in early mid-morning, 10:30, 11, and that's when they would break their time-restricted feeding, and then they would have a meal then, which would be like their main lunch type thing, which they would get, and they would extend that. Usually, it was between 11 and 1 o'clock that it would happen. Then they'd go for a bit of a siesta. Especially if you're in the Mediterranean, and then in the afternoon they would have like a coffee or something like that, and then in the early evening they would basically have a dinner, and it would be a much smaller compared to the lunch, which was sort of a feast with the rest of the family and everyone else. That's how people lived. So 2 meals, or maybe a snack in between with a coffee, but that was pretty much it. This sort of 6 meals and all that is just nonsense. It's just contraindicated when it comes to humans. And, there's nothing wrong with cortisol. Cortisol cycles. It'll rise in the morning. It'll come down at about 11 o'clock. Even in a fasted state, it will still come down. It goes through cycles. To be amplified, it can only happen if you basically do not time-restricted feeding, like multiple days of fasting. That will raise cortisol, but that's a good thing. It's a sort of a protective thing. So that's not a bad thing, but it won't raise it, super high. It'll just raise it slightly, and then it will come down again. It'll go through the sort of cycles again, circadian cycles. There's plenty of research out there to show that is exactly what happens. This sort of excessive stuff, cortisol, actually we see more on a mixed diet, carbohydrate diet. That's where we see more modern humans that are eating constantly, that have got running much higher cortisol levels. So we didn't see that in the past, where people were eating more animal-based and eating less often. Today, cortisol levels are much higher due to stress, but also the sort of nutrient deficiencies and stuff that are putting stress on their bodies. That means the bodies aren't functioning properly, they're not repairing properly, and all that. And these are other factors that are driving cortisol as well, or derangements in the endocrine system. So, I mean, It's far more complicated, and people will use reductionism to basically poo-poo certain lifestyles, which is nonsense. But yeah, but most of these pro-metabolic people, we're talking about bodybuilders here, just for other people to understand what we're talking about. Most of these people are dying young, and they're basically pushing anabolism to extreme levels, basically throwing in insulin and throwing in, deranging their system even further, plus a whole lot of, steroids and whatever else. I wouldn't be getting any advice from those clowns. Most of them won't be even around. They've got no longevity. They're dropping off the perch in their 30s, and some in their just make it to their 40s if they're lucky, with all the crap that they're using. So I definitely wouldn't take any from the modern bro clowns that are killing themselves. Yeah. They're waterlogging their muscles. They look bigger. The muscles aren't stronger. That's one thing you have to understand. They're not stronger. They're just bigger. If they were stronger, they'd be able to be world champions in weightlifting. They'd be able to lift more than the top international people. No, they just basically got more water retention, and they're more waterlogged, and that's high deuterium, and that's causing damage to those muscles and to the energy production in those muscles. They will pay for that, and they do, with a shorter lifespan. So yeah, good luck to them. I would not take advice from those clowns.